We have 32 people registered, so I was gonna
give it just a minute.
Give it just a minute since we're about halfway there, but
Yeah, Kimberly, I think video for visual learners, that really, really helps bring home content in what you're trying to get them to understand.
All right, well, we will get started because I don't want to keep everybody waiting. And if people join us late, we are recording it, of course. So welcome to our session. We are your presenters, and we are using these screenshots so that you see we too make videos. Natalie's and Katie's photos look much better than mine, but I'm Allegra. I teach English. I'm the department chair for English and Humanities at the Connect campus.
Hi, everybody. I'm Natalie Russell, and I teach biology at the Connect campus.
Hi, all. I'm Katie Lubinsky, and I'm an e-learning instructional designer at Connect campus.
So we're going to use a little polling, and so to be completely honest with you, this is a tool that none of us have ever used before, but we're going to practice what we preach, and we're going to try something new and see what happens. So you can go to the website, or you can use the QR code to access the website if you're using your phone. We just want to ask you a few questions as we go and kind of keep you engaged. So that's the website that we'll be using, and that's the code. And anytime we use it, we will show you that information so you don't have to try and keep it memorized. Let's see, there we go. So our first question is why you're here.
And do we have a timer, or how long do we want to give everybody?
Just a couple minutes, yeah. So let's see. Oh, I'm sharing a window, not my screen. So let me show you the results.
And I learned something, Allegra, about this. You're limited to 20 characters, so you have to be very concise in your answer.
Yes, you do. So I will show you. Oh my goodness. This is fun to do this on one screen. But I will show you the answers in just a second. Here we go. So it's important to us to know what brought you here and what you're interested in learning about. And it looks like most of you are here because you want ideas. A lot of you are typing things related to Canvas. So I'm excited about that. Integrative learning, creativity, all things that are very important to us. So I'm very excited. And this word cloud keeps changing. So thank you all for sharing that with us. But that was a practice question just to get everybody into the system. And we'll ask you some more substantive questions as we go on. Assuming I can find the window I want to share. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start first by just talking about general things to remember when you're making videos for your students. There are a few things that you want to avoid. The first is dating the video if you plan to use it again and again. So if you're making welcome to Spring 2021 video, and you're not and you can make references to current events and say things like this week or last week. But if you're doing a lecture on Thomas Jefferson that you're planning to use in your course for the next several semesters, you just want to be careful to avoid things like this week, this month, last week, things that would limit the usability of the video. Those things tend to confuse students. We see them a lot because if you're talking to your students, you're likely to make some timely references, but then 2 semesters later, it's confusing or students realize, oh, this video is not especially relevant. You also need to avoid copyright violations. So that includes images, text, music. Don't use copyrighted materials. Look for Creative Commons materials. There's plenty of royalty-free images if you want to put pictures or graphics in your videos. There's some royalty-free music that you can get. YouTube is where I tend to get that. And don't, you're pretty familiar, hopefully, with copyright violations, but if you're uploading especially to YouTube, you will get flagged almost immediately. And we want to avoid that. And you want to avoid making bad videos. And that doesn't mean that your videos need to be perfect, and it doesn't mean that they need to look like they were produced by Steven Spielberg. But if your video is hard to hear, if it's very grainy, if we can't see what you're talking about, if you're doing a webcast presentation, it tends to misrepresent you and your ethos, and it also makes students less likely to watch your future videos because they think, oh, this is going to be another one of those crummy videos. So no video is better than an especially bad one. And if this is really particularly important if it has to do with sound or image quality, if students can't hear you, if there's wind blowing, all those things that annoy you in Teams calls, people's dogs barking and horns honking and that kind of stuff in the background, just remake the video. And just remember, no video is better than a terrible video because it can, keep students from being engaged in the process. So we have lots of great ideas, and you guys started this in the chat, when to use videos in your online classes. Some things that we tend to see instructors do really successfully. One is introductions to lessons. Sometimes people put these in weekly announcements, and sometimes these are just in the lesson folders themselves. But this really helps provide context for students. You can connect this week's information to what you've been learning in the previous few weeks. You can emphasize the things that students need to pay the most attention to. If students are reading a textbook chapter, having that video that they watched where you emphasize 2 or 3 really important concepts, they know to be looking for that, so you're paying attention to that, and that will help them when they get to the assessments. Of course, we love instructor presence and humanizing your online classroom. So anything that's just a little bit of your personality, if you want to create an instructor intro video, if you want to make an encouraging little video in your announcement that says, you guys did great on this test, here's what you have coming up, I'm really excited about what you've done so far. It can be a 2-minute video to just kind of relate to students, show them your person, show them your face. And, create a unique experience. Do something with a video that you couldn't do anyway else. So demonstrate how to do something. Show students what something looks like. You can interview a colleague or have an academic conversation so students get that interdisciplinary information. You can demonstrate what you're asking them to do, so show them a model of what you're asking them to turn in. Or you can take them to a place that they otherwise couldn't access. So if you have the opportunity to travel somewhere, you can make a video to show your students what something looks like. All of those, and those are just barely getting started ideas. And I'm sure as we talk about video and as you've been thinking, especially this semester, you're thinking about the way your course is designed and the things that your course might need to supplement what you already have as we're moving from Blackboard to Canvas. You're going to get lots of ideas, and you probably can't make as many videos as ideas that you'll get, but hopefully we help kind of guide you in that process. So a few things to remember. Don't be afraid to show your face, and when you do, just remember to smile. It sounds so basic. but sometimes people are nervous. They're setting up, or sometimes they've had some technical difficulties, so they're like in a little bit of a mood. And sometimes it's just not natural to smile all the time when you're talking to yourself, but it makes such a big difference to your students if you're smiling when they see your face. It's also okay not to show your face. It's okay just to do a screencast of a PowerPoint where you're going over important points. It's okay to show a picture of yourself instead of the camera on you while you're talking. Me personally, I tend to make really exaggerated facial expressions. So looking at my face can be kind of distracting in a video because that's how I talk. So I don't necessarily show my face in all my videos, but I do in some of them because I do want my students to know, hey, I'm a person. I have a personality. I have a sense of humor. Definitely ask for help. Katie and her team are great at helping and troubleshooting and giving great ideas and helping people come up with strategies for making great videos. You also have colleagues who are experts on your campus or at the Connect campus. So you can definitely ask for help. You can also just Google things. We have some video editing software that you can get access to that we'll go over later, but mostly in the next upcoming semesters, people will probably be using Studio a lot. You do need a microphone and a camera, but you don't need anything fancy. So that microphone and camera can be what's built into your phone. It can be what's built into your webcam, or you can get, a few degrees fancier and buy a microphone and buy a little bit of a nicer webcam than the one that's built into your computer. But you don't need to spend thousands of dollars or even hundreds of dollars to make a quality video. And if you have a phone that's fewer than 5 years old, then it's going to make a high enough quality video with good enough sound, as long as you're in a quiet place, that you don't need anything more than that. So just some technical, when you set it up, if you're going to be the person talking, then make sure your face is centered, make sure students can see your whole head. You don't want to disappear into the bottom of the screen. So play around with things, test things out, see what the best setup is. I actually have a shelf on my bookcase that I prop my phone on, and I pull a specific book out every time to set it on because it's the right height. So just play around with things. Experiment on what looks best, where the best lighting is. If you're screencasting, if you're showing students how to do something, like here's how you find an article in the library database, having no face is probably better because students need to focus on what you're doing on the screen as opposed to seeing your face in the bottom corner. Your face doesn't, no offense, but your face doesn't add value to that particular kind of video. And just be cautious, just be aware of background noise, people moving around in the background, ambient sounds. Listen to it, and if you have to re-record videos a few times, go ahead and do it. I have to re-record every video I make, I don't know, 6 or 7 times, but I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. And I would also recommend in those video lectures that you give students thinking time. It feels real dorky in a video to say, all right, take a minute and think, and then pause. But if you take a minute, give students time to think, they have time to process, they don't feel like you're speeding through the content, and students who are trying to get through it quicker, they can play it at 1.5 or 2 times the speed. So you're not boring them if they want to go through it quicker. But I tend to give my students time to think and process what I've been saying so that they're not all in a jumble. Definitely use scripts or notes. I, in fact, read from a script. Otherwise, I tend to ramble. I don't know if you noticed, probably. But use your personality. If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, don't attempt it. It won't work. And ask your students questions. Give them things to think about. You're not just talking into a vacuum, right? You have students who will be watching it, so you can ask them questions. And you can ask us questions in the chat. I will check it as soon as I get through my slides here. Check your lighting. I'm sure in the past year, we've all heard about, putting lamps in specific areas to light up your face so that you don't look like a ghost or you don't look like a character from a scary movie. And you also just kind of want it to be flattering actually see their face. So don't sit in front of an open window. Stay an even distance away from your mouth, from your microphone. Don't ever touch your microphone. And one thing to know about audio recording is too loud is way worse than too quiet. So if you're not sure how close or how far away you should be, or how loud or how quiet you should be, you can test it out. But always err on the side of quiet. Students can turn that up. If you're too loud, then you're going to ruin the sound quality. Trust me, I've done that, and it's not pleasant. But yeah, do a few tests. See what sounds good, what looks good, and what works. And don't be afraid to try out new things. And if they don't work really well or your students don't respond, then try something different the next time. And they're going to talk a lot today about accessibility, but just things to keep in mind. You need captions or a transcript. If they're auto-captioned, I would recommend editing them because they're not going to get all of the words right, and they certainly won't get punctuation correct. Don't use on-screen charts or diagrams unless you're going to describe them in the video. Just keep in mind that not all students can or will watch the video and listen to it. So if you have important information in a chart, you want to describe it and make sure that students understand how to make sense of the visual information you're giving them. Okay, so we have our next question. So go back to that app, and I'm going to ask you the next question. So this is just a yes or no. Have you used other people's videos in your courses? So TED Talks, videos from other professors, videos you found on YouTube. Have you used other people's videos in your courses? Almost everyone said yes. All right, our next question. Have you created videos for your courses? Yes or no? Ooh, everyone said yes. All right. And last question before I turn it over to our next presenter. How do you feel about making a video for your course? Excited, scared, angry? Probably not angry. How do you feel about making, ooh, comfortable is an answer someone gave. All right, okay, great. Good. All right, the good news is nobody has a negative feeling about it. So it is now time for, oh, these are slides. They're going to be, ow, sorry. I just poked myself in the eye. I swear, you guys, I do have a brain. I think I talked about this, right? Having a microphone, using your phone as a camera. A lot of webcams have built-in cameras, so those are fine to use. If you would like recommendations, if you want to spend $20, you're welcome to ask any of us what we would recommend, and we'll send you a couple choices. But, you know, again, what you have built in is probably fine. If you're thinking about doing a lecture capture where you're actually lecturing and you want to record it, you probably need a special microphone. And again, we can make some recommendations if that's something that you'd like to get. If you are teaching in a classroom that has lecture capture technology, then you won't need to get anything special for that. And video editing, we wouldn't recommend going too far into video editing because then you'll spend your whole life doing that. But we do have access. We have a few licenses at TCC for something called Camtasia that allows you to do some video editing. And I'm not familiar with whether you can edit things in Studio. I don't think that you can, but you can certainly upload edited videos. The good news is that students don't need it to be super edited. They don't need you to fade in and fade out and add credits at the end. But you do want to have at least the ability to take things out if you mess things up, or to take out the beginning or the end. So if you want to get into video editing, can share with you the software that we have licensed at TCC. I actually don't know if there's any available licensing or if you'd have to get on the wait list or if we can convince them to add licenses, but I use Camtasia for that. And that is something that TCC has a license for. And if you have an iPhone, I would recommend that you look at Apple Clips to make videos just because it's very easy to use. It has live captions. You can save it as an MP4. You can upload it to Studio. You can upload it to social media. And it's a very easy way to make videos with fun backgrounds and captions. So it's an app you download. It might actually already be on your phone, and you can just kind of play around with using it. Okay, now it really is Katie's turn.
Thank you, Allegra. No problem. Let's see here. Let me get this screen up and let me get it on present. There we go. So hopefully everybody can see everything. I can't see the chat now. That's one of the disadvantages of presenting. But I'm going to present today on accessibility. So we've looked at some general tips for making really great videos, but how do we make those videos accessible, meaning available and watchable by all students, or at least the great majority of them? And so we've got a quick quiz question, a polling question. And so if you will hop over to that vvox.app link there and type in that ID, we would love to hear what you think about accessibility, and maybe if you're struggling with that, do you know much about it? What's your experience trying to make your courses and your videos accessible? And so Allegra, or I think Allegra, you've got the link up. If you wouldn't mind, let's see here, I don't actually have it pulled up. If you wouldn't mind in a second screen sharing the results for that one, because I myself am kind of new at VVox, so I don't have it pulled up since I'm on this particular screen. We can give it about a couple minutes. And I'm just pulling up the results on my phone as well, just so I have another place that I can look at this really quick.
Captions and captioning are leading contenders there. Also errors, editing, and legal, which is probably,
Interesting, yeah.
making sure that it's complying. But yeah, captioning and editing are the big responses to that poll.
Nice. All right. That's what I kind of figured. A lot of times when we do online instructor certification, captioning is one of those common things that people want to know about and don't really know much about. So we will definitely talk a little bit about that today and some of your options. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward. And so really quick, first off, before you even get to your videos, you might have Word documents, PowerPoint slides, or you might have already recorded a lecture, maybe in YouTube, and you might be thinking about captioning that. We also will now have Studio for Canvas, and Natalie will be talking more exclusively about Studio. But one or a couple things you can do oops, sorry, I was trying to use the pointer tool. For PowerPoint and Word is they have an accessibility feature. So you can, open up PowerPoint. If you click on the review ribbon on that sort of menu up there at the top, you can click on check accessibility, and that will kind of look over your PowerPoint slides and see if there's any glaring things that you can fix that will make things more accessible for your students. Also, in Word, there is the same option, except you would want to go to File and Info, and then if you click on Check for Issues, you can click on Check Accessibility. And I know that this will be a lot of information for us today to share with you. So I think we'll have these slides available at the end of the presentation if you want to check out any of this afterwards. But I thought really quick we could demo how you could do this in PowerPoint. So really quick, let me exit the full screen. Let's see if this works. So 1 minute while I switch over to the other slides. 1 second.
Katie, you're not sharing your screen.
Oh, yes, it's okay. I kind of figured that was the case. I'm just going to a new PowerPoint. So 1 moment. This is just the accessibility PowerPoint. So bear with me while I try to switch.
And while you're switching, I just want to answer Melanie's question. I think you're asking if you have quizzes that require listening, if that falls within accessibility guidelines. And I would say if it's related to the objectives of the course, so in a languages course, it would be. But that's a great question to ask our colleagues in SAR for the best strategies if you do have students with accommodations related to audio-visual content. Our colleagues in SAR are very happy to help us with these types of questions and to just say what's the best strategy for meeting the students' needs, for making it accessible, but also making sure that we're meeting the course objectives, which do, of course, relate to listening and speaking. So no one is an expert at TCC the way that the SAR office is.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly. Oh, go ahead.
Do they have an email address that you have on hand, or should I just look that up?
Oh, I'll put it in the chat.
Pop it in the
Absolutely.
chat. Okay, awesome. Yes, they would be your first line of defense to kind of get that information that you're needing if you are needing information. And then let's take a look at slide layout. If you are wanting to make slides accessible and also attractive, one easy thing you can go do is go get slide templates that are already accessible. So Office has some of those. I have the link here, and it will be in a resource sheet that we give to you guys at the end of the session. But you can just look at these templates, and a lot of these are already going to be made and geared toward accessibility. So that might save you some time. Something to note is that screen readers and users of those, sometimes they scan a list of links. And so a common issue I see come up quite a lot is that people will say link of, or they will do like this. So I did this on purpose. If you see this link here for Office, the correct way to write that so that a screen reader can read that without having to read out the entire link is you would just right click, and I can't do that without exiting out of the main view. Let's see here. So you would just right click, and let me see if I should have just showed it this way. So 1 moment while I switch over again. See if it pulls up. There we go. Okay, now you should see my whole screen. So what I'd want to do here is I would want to highlight this, right click it, edit the link, and give a description up here to display what kind of link this is. So I'd probably write accessible PowerPoint templates up here, and that's what would be displayed by the screen reader. So that's how that should look. But that's just something that I see a lot of when I'm looking at courses in dev shells that people do quite a lot. So I'm going to keep it on this view just because it's easier to transition between one thing and another. But I kind of created this quick slide deck to show you some common issues and how to fix them in PowerPoint, since we use that a lot for lectures. So screen readers, they read the elements of a slide in the order they were added to the slide, which might be very different from the order you want things to be read or appear to students. So keep that in mind. So if you have, your title down at the bottom, or, things randomly scattered on a slide, if a student can't see that slide and they're using a screen reader, it's going to come out totally jumbled. So it's better, especially that's another reason to use these accessibility templates, is that they are kind of geared toward making it easy to read and for you to not have to kind of figure out what should I do so this looks readable on a screen reader. So if you can see any issues on this slide, the slide order, what are some things, and I have it down here, so I kind of, y'all got to cheat a little bit. But if you were to go to accessibility, so let's go over here to review and click a check accessibility, it will show us the errors. So there's some alternative text here, which is kind of interesting. Hidden somewhere is this is a common issue. You've started a slide, you put a text box in, and then you forgot about it. But this will throw things off with the screen reader. It won't be able to read what's going on here. So this helped me know that that was there because I wouldn't have known about it before. And now that I fixed that, the only other issue is captions, which we'll get to in a moment. But you can kind of see why accessibility, the accessibility checker is so handy. So slide images. If you have any images on slides, I'm a visual learner. I like to look at things. It helps me understand a bit better. But one thing that is another common issue besides links being just, copy pasted rather than edited to display what the link is about, is alt text. So if you, in creating alt tags, so if you have an image, you want to right click on it, and this particular image here is decorative, so it has nothing to do with maybe the content I'm presenting here. So I just right click on it, and I would edit the alt text. And over here I would mark, it's already clicked because I had played with it earlier, but I would mark this as decorative. And what that does is it lets the person who is looking at this with the screen reader realize that this image has, it's just a decorative image. It doesn't have anything to do with the content. I highly recommend not really putting these in, things like this, into your PowerPoints, because it can throw people off. And it's also just kind of, extra stuff that distracts them from the content. But if for some reason you do want to put one of these in, make sure you right click and make sure it's marked decorative. So finally, I think beyond captioning, the only other thing I wanted to mention to you guys was tables. If you put tables in, that can be very, very difficult for people to read with the screen reader. And there's a lot of heated discussions and debates about tables. But what you can do is you can click on the table, and in the options menu, you want to make sure that you design this table so that someone who's using a screen reader can see what's going on, because it reads the table from top to bottom, left to right. So if your information is not carefully organized in there, it could be very confusing for someone with a screen reader to navigate. So just keep in mind that while tables can make information seem more organized, you want to be very careful about how you present them in a slide deck or anywhere else, because someone with a screen reader would have trouble if you don't do this correctly. So I won't go into deep detail about that. The final thing that I know a lot of you had mentioned that is a struggle is captioning videos. So I'm really excited. Natalie will be presenting Studio in a little bit, and it has automatic closed captioning, which is great. But there are a few things about captioning that you should be careful about. So there's a link here, and as you can see, I didn't put the hyperlink in. I edited this link so that it displays what you'd be clicking on and what that information would convey. So this is a closed captioning step-by-step for PowerPoint. I'll have this in the resource doc that we give at the end. But let's see if we try to use auto captioning for PowerPoint, what would happen. And I don't know if this will, earlier today, it took a really, really long time. So I actually think, just given where we're at in the presentation, I might wait off on this. So scratch this for now. Just trying to think of what would be the key takeaways there. But you can, like, say you wanted to record this PowerPoint and caption it, you can do that. So you could record these slides. You may already know this from the current slide or from the beginning of the presentation, but something that you will want to make sure is checked is always use subtitles, and then you want to adjust your subtitle language and spoken language there. So you can also put where the subtitles would appear on the slides. So that's good to know. But a thing that you would want to note, and that was kind of why I put this information here on the slide about let's try this, but I think it's going to take a little too long, is that I tested this out the other day just to see what would happen, because I have a bit of a southern accent. I don't know if y'all notice, but it tends to not come out very accurate. I don't know if you've been on YouTube as well, but if you are subtitling something with automatic captions, that doesn't always work out so well. So you want to check what you did with the subtitles. I'm actually using the closed captioning on Teams right now to see myself talk, and it's funny because a lot of things it will get incorrectly. It says "and" instead of "and," but just be careful and aware of that. So let me stop sharing these slides here and go back to our main presentation. I'm waiting for it to pull up. So one moment. All right, so thank you for bearing with me while that decides to pull up. All right, so there it is. So really quick, I think the only other things I wanted to kind of point out to you are about the rich content editor in Canvas, since we're kind of going more towards talking about Canvas with Natalie's presentation in a moment. Canvas has the rich content editor. It has a wonderful button. You'll see it when you open that up, and she will maybe be able to demo that. I don't know if we can get to that today because there's just so much ground to cover. But this image here, this little picture of the person, if you click on that next to the rich content editor, it's an accessibility checker. So it does a similar thing to what PowerPoint and Word do to check and make sure that your links, your pictures, your whatever you put in there are accessible. And you can also do closed captioning with Canvas. So if you were wondering about that, it is absolutely a possibility there. Same deal as YouTube or as anything else. If it's automatically captioned, you may have to go back in and play around with that. Another quick thing to think about is a lot of us make Word documents and then send them to students as PDFs. So there, as you are converting a document, you want to make sure it's accessible, because sometimes you can lose that accessibility going from one program to another. So if you are in PowerPoint, for instance, you would click on File and then Save As. Then you would click on the file you want to be saved and you choose PDF, and then there's some options there to select. But just kind of keep in mind that as you're switching from one format to another, you could lose accessibility. So I would highly recommend like LinkedIn Learn. Since we have access to that, it's wonderful. It can kind of walk you through if you type in, PowerPoint accessibility or PDF accessibility. It can kind of walk you through what you need to do in order to make that accessible. Or Googling is also a good option. But again, I kind of briefly mentioned YouTube. You can close caption in YouTube. You can automatically close caption, or you can import captions. I would be happy to walk anybody through that. I do that quite often when we are certifying instructors. I just tend to create like a quick 30-minute one-on-one in Teams with them. But in a nutshell, these are the steps you would need to follow to make that happen. In theory, it works. In practice, it can be a little bit more difficult to navigate. So I'm happy if you ever want to just, message me in Teams, say, hey, can you walk me through this? I'd be happy to schedule a time that works for both of us to do that. So last thing I'll leave you with before I go is, and pass the torch to Natalie, is that you can look at accessibility in Canvas and closed captioning using the link that's here. And again, you can go through those links later. We'll have those resources for you. But really quick, we can go ahead and pass the torch to Natalie. There is a survey, though, while we are switching presenters. So if you will go to this link here and type in the ID, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Natalie can take that over.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. And while I'm sharing my screen, I'm going to let Allegra give the feedback on that poll. Maybe she can just do it with her audio instead of.
Yes, I can. And well, maybe. Nope, I closed it. So skip the poll and just put in the chat if you have questions or ideas or concerns. As Natalie is showing us using Canvas Studio, we want to save some time at the end to make sure that we've addressed your questions. And we saved the most exciting piece for last. Natalie has been, yeah, this is why they're here. Natalie has been using Canvas Studio and playing around with the functions. And so she's going to show that to you, but we'll have a few minutes at the end to get to your questions. So take it away, Natalie.
All right. So let me say this. I'm certainly not an expert. So these are the things that are my takeaways from my time of using Canvas Studio. And I think probably it sounds like many of you are already used to using some YouTube video content in your class, whether that's from some other source or whether you've made your own videos and have uploaded those to YouTube. So one thing that I want to point out is if you want to bring a YouTube video into Canvas Studio, one thing I learned is it must be a public video. I have several videos that I have unlisted, and you can absolutely use those in Canvas. You just can't bring those into Studio. So I'll show you what that looks like. You can also upload videos directly to Studio, and this is just, you'll get this, but this is all the different types of video files that Canvas Studio will accept, and I don't know what in the world would be a file type that's not in that list, so it's extensive. You can record a new video in Studio. If you, as Allegra mentioned, there's not a lot of editing options, but you want to do a quick screen capture or a webcam video, then that makes it super easy to do it within Studio. We'll talk about some ways to share that with students. And then one of my favorite things that I am excited to use is how to create a video quiz. And I'll show you that you can do that as a non-graded quiz, but you can still see who has taken that quiz, or you can decide, I actually want, the students to be graded on that quiz. So with that, let's move over to Canvas. And I'm just going to show you some example videos that are put into Canvas in different ways. But the first thing that I want to point out to you, in case you haven't really spent a lot of time in Canvas, is on the left menu here, wherever you're at in your class or in your dashboard, you should have access to this left menu. This tool right here that looks sort of like a TV with a bunch of things coming, like octopus things coming off the bottom, this is Studio. And so this is where you would want to do your work with your videos. Now, I'm gonna take us to Studio real quick. The beautiful thing is that, let's say you might be using videos over multiple semesters and multiple courses. Once you have uploaded them or shared them, they're going to stay in your library. So I have a few videos here. And what I want you to see is this first video was one that I recorded in Studio. So I just recorded my screen right there in Studio. The videos that I have actually brought in from YouTube, you can see it has the little YouTube play button at the bottom. This video here on the respiratory system is one that I actually recorded and edited with software and then just uploaded that video file directly into Studio. And the reason I'm pointing out those differences to you is you have different options available to you depending on whether you recorded it or you uploaded it versus if it's a YouTube video. Now, one thing that I do want to show you is, so let's just look at this respiratory system video. Once I have uploaded it, and that is as simple as up on the right hand part of the screen, this add button right here. I just click my add, And then I'll just either browse to find my video file, or I can just drag and drop it in. Okay. Now, if it's a YouTube video, then I would just copy, right, that share link and paste it there and add it that way. So whichever type of video, you'll just go in to this add area, and that's where you would add it to your library. Now, if I just wanted to start right now and do, let's say I'm going to do a walkthrough for my course and I want to record my screen, or I'm going to make a quick webcam video, just hit this record button. And if you have ever used Screencast-O-Matic, that's essentially the tool that will launch to help you record your video. Now, once you have some videos like we do here in your library, then you have sort of this little kebab, I believe is what it's called, that you can select, and you can share the media directly from here, or this is a feature that I want to point out. You can create this is in the studio area, you can create a quiz. So I could create a new quiz if I wanted to, but I've already created one quiz. So let's just go ahead and open this up. Hopefully. Okay, so you can see it has my video there, and where you see these little blue circles with question marks at the bottom, those are areas where I have actually added a question into my quiz. Now, if I wanted to add another question, I just click this plus sign and I can insert the question. Now, I can play through the video from here and make sure I've added my question in the right area. And then you do have some options with settings. Okay, so I can name it. Maybe if I'm going to have, a couple of different quizzes, like a pre-quiz and then a, I don't know, post-quiz, I can do that. Here's one interesting feature. So if you wanted to, you can actually hide. So right now you see exactly where those question marks are, where the questions will come up. But if I don't want my students to just skip ahead and just click on the questions, then I can actually hide where those are on the video. Therefore, they're sort of encouraged strongly to just watch the video from beginning to end as not to miss any of those questions. So just in the interest of time, we've got about 11 minutes left. I'm going to take you into my course and just show you some different ways that I have put video content or video quiz content into my class so that you can see how that affects captioning. Now, one other thing though, before we leave, this is a video that I uploaded the video file. So this did not come from YouTube. This is something that I uploaded directly. So what I want you to see is you have some options here, including there's a captions tab. So you see that right now I have English captions selected. Now you have this option when you bring the file in or when you record it. The downside of bringing in a YouTube video, even though YouTube, right, will create those captions in YouTube, if you bring it into Studio, the captions are not as obvious or accessible, and I'm going to show you what that looks like in the course. So now I'm going to go back to my dashboard just because I have this sandbox ready to show you some examples. So we're going to look at some different ways that video content can be put into Canvas and what that looks like to students, sort of the, benefits or some of the downsides. So this is a video that I directly brought in using the rich content editor, and I'll show you just to remind you where that is. But I brought it in through Studio. So I didn't bring it in from YouTube. I used the Studio icon that's in the rich content editor. Now, this particular video was added to my studio, my library and studio, directly from YouTube. So what I want you to see is, I'll play just a second for you. And you may not can hear, but there is audio, and you can see that there is no option for me to show captions. Now, I can, which is hard to see, but if I click on this YouTube area here, it will open in YouTube, and then the students can see the captions in YouTube, but that's really not very obvious from this point. Okay, now notice, because it was brought in from YouTube, when I go to captions, it's just going to tell me there are no captions yet. Now, I could upload captions, but as far as any kind of auto-generated or them being brought in from YouTube, that doesn't happen if you do it this specific way. Now, I'm going to edit this just because I want you to see when I'm talking about the rich content editor, that's all of this information here. That's what we mean with rich content editor. And notice this icon right here is that same studio icon, right, that we use to go to studio. So if I want to bring anything in from studio, I just click on this icon, I select what I want, and I import it that way. This was brought in that way, but the downside is the captions are not really very student friendly, right, because it was brought in from YouTube. So I'm going to cancel out of this. And let's move forward to another example of video content. Okay. So this video was one of the ones that I did not bring in from YouTube. I uploaded the video file myself and had Studio auto caption it in English. So you can see when students see this video, there's very clearly a captioning option that they can turn on if they want to watch the captions with the video. So certainly that's better, right, than the other way. Now in this next option, this is the video, the same video that I showed you in the first example that didn't have a captioning option. This time, instead of using the studio icon, I actually used the YouTube icon. You can bring a YouTube video directly into Canvas with the rich content editor. And because it's coming directly from YouTube, when the students play this video, they'll have the option to turn on the captions. Okay. So if you're going to use a video directly from YouTube, that would be the preferred option because the captions are going to be more obvious for students. Now, before I move on, I just want to say one thing. If it's a video that was created by someone else, like I like Bozeman Science, or maybe you have a TED Talk, then the best way would to be bring it in this way. However, if it's one of, like, I have several videos that I have made in the past that I've uploaded to YouTube. Well, if I would prefer to have those in Canvas Studio so I can make video quizzes out of those, YouTube has the option for me to download my own video content from YouTube, and then I can upload it into Canvas. So that can take care of that captioning issue if it's your own video that you own. And if you're like me, the videos that I made a year or so ago, I don't probably have those MP4 files anymore. So the fact that I can get those back from YouTube is great. Okay, so I'm going to show you two more examples and then I will pause for questions. But hopefully I'm not the only one that's really interested in the video quiz options. And this is a video quiz. So I'm just going to say resume quiz here. Whoops. So you can see that I have left for students so they can see exactly where the questions are going to be on the quiz. So as they watch through, I'm just going to get it to this point.
They're membrane-bound organelles, and they're typically larger and more complex than prokaryotic cells.
So you can see that right where I have inserted that question, it's going to pop up and it gives them a chance to answer. And let's say they say, oops, I kind of dozed off, I don't remember. So they can click rewatch and go back and watch the video. Okay, now, a couple of things. This quiz was obviously the way you create video quizzes is in Studio. So it was created in Studio, but notice there are not captions down here for students to turn on. And that's because this video was brought into Studio from YouTube. So again, the captions are not going to be auto-generated. That means there is not a way besides going to YouTube, and if my students do that, they're not going to see those questions. So this is not a great option as far as a video quiz is concerned. Okay, now this particular video, there's two ways to do videos. One is just to allow students to go through and answer the questions and it doesn't count for a grade. That previous video quiz was that way. Now you still have the ability to see who has taken the quiz, it just isn't part of their grade. You can also, though, use a quiz in the gradebook, and this one I have created this way. And after students take the quiz, you'll be able to see, specific details about the quiz. You can also go and see individual student results. Obviously, you can go to the gradebook, right, and see if you've had it added to the gradebook. But with that, I'm going to switch really quickly back to the presentation, and then you can be starting your questions in the chat. What I wanted to show you is in the presentation later, because we're sort of out of time, just as a reminder, it shows you where you find Studio, how you record a new video or audio, or how you would upload one. This is your way to embed a Studio video using the Rich Content Editor. And this is showing you how you would create a quiz. Finally, this is just a summary of my thoughts about what to do as far as the best practices with captioning, just because of that issue with when you bring a YouTube video in, Canvas won't auto caption it. You could obviously put in a transcript. There's ways around that, but those are just my suggestions. Now, we're going to share a document with all of these links because if you want the grades to post to the gradebook, there's instructions on exactly how to do that. Or if you don't, and if you do. And I would be happy to help anybody, as I've enjoyed learning how to do some of that in Studio. So with that, I'm going to stop since we only have 2 minutes and see if there are any questions. So Melanie, you're saying you downloaded a video, let's say from your YouTube account, and it didn't work in Studio?
No, what I did was I uploaded an audio file into Studio because one thing I was really excited when I heard about the fact that the students can download more easily from Studio than they can from YouTube if they don't have a fancy YouTube account. And so I was like, oh, can I use this for my audio files as well? Because a lot of students like to have an MP3 of the vocab list so they can repeat it because language class. And I uploaded an audio file and I didn't put it into an assignment or anything in Student View, which is what I want to play around with and see if that will change it. I just went back immediately to it and clicked download, and it re-downloaded to my computer as an MP4, which would not be ideal because they'd be less likely to be able to play it on their cell phones during their workout and hear the vocab and stuff if it's an MP4 than if it's an MP3. So,
So you uploaded it as an MP3, but it downloaded as an MP4. Is that right?
Yeah. No, I don't remember if I think it was an MP3, but I grabbed a random audio file just to see.
Gotcha.
And then I did it and I was like, oh. So I got a little frustrated and just moved on to do something else. So I'm going to play around with it some more. I'm going to upload I'm going to make sure it's an MP3. I'm going to embed it into a page or something, go into Student View and hit download and see if it does it again. So.
Yes, and let us know, what you find, because I think we're all going to be learning more as we're trying new things, right? So
sure. Yeah, I mean, and I don't have it's not a big problem to upload an audio file separately, directly embedded into a lesson and not have it stored in Studio, but storage is always a thing with media because you got to stay organized. And so I was really hoping for the organization that Studio would provide me for both audio and video. So we're going to cross our fingers and hope.
There you go. Yes, let us know.
So I don't want to interrupt. I just want to say it is 3:00. So if you need to leave, you're welcome to log off. We've got your attendance and we will mark it in the Learn Center if you're registered. If you're not registered, you can add this to the Learn Center yourselves. But if you have questions, we're happy to stick around and answer any questions you have or to point you to resources available at TCC to help you as you create your videos. So keep asking questions, but I just wanted to let you know it's 3. So if you have other things you need to do, you are certainly welcome to log off as well. That seems to have silenced all conversation.
Also, there is a link to the webinar resources that I had mentioned earlier. It's further up in the chat. Let me grab that and paste that back down at the bottom, just so you don't have to scroll up too far. One moment. Hopefully it'll. Let's see here.
And I'll say, I mean, this meeting chat should stay around in your team. So
Yes, yeah.
if you find some fantastic trick, share it with everybody on the meeting chat.